Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's New York Torero Club event, Achieving Your Financial Resolutions, featuring Erik Carter, class of 2009 JD. My name is Megan O'Rourke, and I'm the Associate Director of Regional Programs for the USD Office of Alumni Relations. Before we begin today's program, I want to express my sincere hope that you and your loved ones are doing well and are staying healthy this winter season. Here's also to a brighter and better 2022. Events such as this were designed with the Alumni Association's mission in mind to engage and enrich the Torero community for life. We do so every year through in-person and virtual events, interactive webinars, and lifelong learning opportunities. We hope today's program provides you some easy ways to save money, tips on managing your spending if you hate budgeting, and how to finally tackle your debt, among other things. Some housekeeping items before we begin. We are recording this event through Zoom webinar and have activated the Q&A feature and the chat. If you have any questions for Erik, feel free to put them in the Q&A feature and he will address them at the end of today's presentation. Today's recording will also be available on the USD Alumni Association's YouTube channel later this week if you would like to view it at a later time. Before we begin, I would like to take the time to thank today's sponsor, School of Wales, and alumna Maria Terina, class of 2021, for their support. Some more info on School of Wales. School of Wales is an easy to use and even easier to join real estate crowdfunding platform that allows anyone with as little as $500 to invest in developments designed to leave a lasting and a positive impact on their communities, from preserving and honoring historic buildings to fostering investment in underserved neighborhoods and expanding residential options for locals. The investing process is 3 easy steps. 1, invested funds are pooled together. 2, School of Wales invests in projects that go from blueprint to profitable. And 3, when properties start making money, you get paid. So how do you get paid? You get paid each quarter until a preferred return of 8% is reached. From there, the investor, receive 80% of the profits, and the School of Wales receives 20% as a performance fee. To close, School of Wales is graciously offering a USD alumni welcome bonus for all those who sign up for the School of Wales by January 31st of this year. Interested in signing up? More information on how to do so will be sent to registered attendees after today's event. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. At this time, I would like to introduce today's featured speaker, USD alumnus, lawyer, and financial wellness coach, Erik Carter, to turn on his camera and take it away. Erik?
Hey, thanks a lot, Megan. So I want to thank everyone for coming to this session. We're going to be talking about achieving your financial resolutions. And, the 2 most common topics when it comes to New Year's resolutions are things around health, especially weight loss and other things about dieting and exercise, and then finances, especially issues about budgeting and saving and paying off debt. We also got a lot of questions during the registration about investing. So I'll be talking a bit about that as well. But before we dive in, what I want to do is start with a polling question you'll see here on your screen, asking, what were your financial resolutions for 2022? And if you didn't have any financial resolutions, what would they be? If you would, what are some of the goals that you would like to achieve for this year? So go ahead and vote and click submit, and this will help me figure out, where to focus our time today. And for those of you who are putting other, if you want to enter it in the chat box and let me know what some of those goals are, that would be really helpful. All right, let's take a look at the results here. So by far, the most popular topic is planning for financial independence. So we'll definitely be focusing on that. But 43% of you did say creating a budget, and that really can be a part of planning for financial independence, because one of the things that we have to do if we want to be financially independent is find the savings, right, to save for that. And that's going to be a big part of creating a budget. And then 29% of you said saving for emergencies or as a home purchase. 14% of you said other. Someone had here planning to purchase a new vehicle. So same thing, right? When we're looking to save for a big purchase, and nobody here said paying down debt. So I'm going to go really quick through that section. But if any of you do have questions about paying down debt, please let me know when we get to that section. So first thing that we want to do is figure out where our money has been going, right? Because we want to start with a realistic plan going forward. The most realistic thing is to start with what you're actually doing now. And I know, for example, a lot of diet plans start the same way. They'll say, okay, look at what you're eating now, and then we'll think about how we can change that going forward. And so the same thing is going to be true when it comes to spending money and looking to where our money is going. So especially if you've never done this before, it can be a huge eye-opener to see where your money is going. Maybe take a look at least at the last 3 months of your bank and credit card statements as a good place to start. Ideally, you might want to get a whole year, but if I told you a year, many of you just wouldn't do it, right? We know a lot of us just wouldn't take that time. So at least take look at the last 3 months, because that'll give you an average, right, of where your money has been going when you look at what you're spending with credit cards, debit cards. The one thing that won't show up there is what you spent cash on, right? So if you tend to take a lot of money out of the ATM, that won't show up. So that may be something you're going to have to track separately. Perhaps that means having to keep receipts or writing down what you spend with cash if you do tend to spend a lot with cash. Another thing that may not show up when you just look at your last 3 months is non-monthly expenses. So those might be things like holidays, vacations. Of course, now at this time of the year, we're actually going to be capturing a lot of that. In fact, it may overestimate what we spend in those areas if you look at the last 3 months. But also think about like summer vacations, right? Trips that we may take. And a good way to think about those non-monthly expenses is to estimate what we think we'll spend in a year, divide it by 12, and now it's a monthly expense. Okay? And that's something that we can then compare to all the other things that we spend every month. Another thing that's increasingly popular now are using money management apps. There's a lot of different apps that people like. I know the most popular is called Mint. There's nothing to do with the flavor. And it's free. It's something you can download onto your phone. You can also use it on your computer. Some people love it, some people don't, right? So you have to figure out what works for you. Whether you just want to stick to an old-fashioned method of just writing it down, pen and paper, maybe making your own Excel spreadsheet, or using an app, whether it's something maybe your bank offers or something like Mint. Now, the next step is really important. This is not about me or anyone else telling you what to do with your money. That's one of the big misconceptions when it comes to the dreaded B word of budgeting. It's not really about someone else telling you, hey, you should spend more here or less there, and making you feel guilty about your spending, because there's really no right answer to this. All that matters is that your money is going to the things that matter to you, that your spending matches your values. Okay, and everyone's values are different. So as you go through those expenses, once you've taken a look at where your money's going, ask yourself, is this something you even need or want? I mean, when people do this, they often find they're spending money in areas they had no idea they were even spending money on. Maybe you signed up for some subscriptions that you don't even really use and you just kind of forgot to cancel them. So those are like the really easy wins would be to get rid of some of those easy things. The next thing is, for those things that we do want, is there a way to get it at a lower cost? Can we shop around to see if we can get a better deal or perhaps negotiate a better price? I'm going to show you in a moment some common examples of doing that. So these are things that we're not really making a big sacrifice on. In fact, a lot of times we're getting the same exact thing, but just paying less for it. Just taking a few minutes of time, being a little bit more conscious of how we're spending our money so that we can get as much value from our dollar as we can. Now, if those two things aren't going to free up enough savings for the things that you are saving for, right, that are really important for you, like maybe you're looking to buy a home, or someone said earlier they're looking to buy a new car, maybe you want to take a vacation, or maybe you're saving for planning to become financially independent where you don't have to work anymore. more of a long-term goal, ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to make that happen, right? What short-term sacrifices are you willing to make? And that might be something like, if you're right out of school, perhaps you're going to live a little bit longer at home, a little bit longer with roommates before getting your own place. As an example, maybe you're going to start with an older car, right, before getting the new car. Maybe you're going to eat out a bit less because those things are things that maybe right now you are willing to give up because you've got something more important down the line. So let's take a look at some examples of some savings, that you can make that are relatively painless. And by the way, these are using some average numbers done from different studies of what people have actually been able to save. So one that's really simple, shopping around for insurance, particularly with auto insurance. When we get our car, usually that's when people first get their auto insurance. And maybe we got the best deal we could find, or maybe we just got the first, policy we could find. But in any case, it may not be the best deal now, right? Maybe the company that gave you the best deal when you first got that car, and that may have been 5, 10, 20 years ago, may actually not be the one that's going to give you the best rate today. So it can't hurt to shop around and see if you can get a better deal. It's an easy way to save money, and as much as on average $70 a month, the average person's able to save just by switching auto insurance companies, right? Because premiums change, how insurance companies rate you can change. So I personally like to do this anytime I get an offer, because most of the time I know that I'm not going to find a better deal, but it actually just makes me feel better knowing that I'm paying as little as I can. Another thing you can do is look to switch cell phone plans. Now, you may love the network you're in and think, I never want to give up. Let's say, for example, if you're on Verizon, there's a lot of prepaid networks now that use the same network that you may be using, but can cost you a lot less. For example, I know when I first, got a Verizon cell phone plan, I was paying over $100 a month. And now I pay about $30 a month for exactly the same service. It's still using Verizon. It's more data than I will ever need, but I'm paying significantly less just by switching to a prepaid cell phone plan. So it's something, again, just to check out, that's a pretty painless way to save money. And you can see on average, people save about $22 a month. Getting rid of unused subscriptions can save as much as $45 a month. And those things, believe me, can add up. Maybe you sign up for $1, $5, $10, $15 here. Maybe you signed up to watch a show on HBO and you don't really watch it anymore. Easy way to save money. Taking that a step further, some people decide to even cut their cable cord, save about $85 a month on average by just watching everything online, even getting an old-fashioned TV antenna that you can hook up and use to get free local TV in addition to what you can get online. So explore, the options, see what's available to you. Now, the last one, negotiate your bills. I will tell you, I personally do not like negotiating things, but if you can do that, going through all the different service providers you have, seeing if there are discounts that are available to you, seeing if they're willing to give you a better deal, can save you on average about $29 a month. Now, if you're kind of like me and you don't necessarily like to negotiate yourself, or maybe you've negotiated it, maybe you've done some negotiating, but you want to see if you can, squeeze any more savings. Hold on one second. I'm trying to actually share a website that doesn't seem to want to be coming up right now. I'll just give you the name of the site. It's called Bill Cutters with a Z. And there's one other one called Bill Fixers. And what these companies will do is they will actually negotiate your bills for you. And generally they'll do that in exchange for about half of whatever they save. So the point is, if they don't save you anything, it hasn't cost you anything, but anything they're able to save you is just extra money because they're not changing anything. Okay, they're not changing your cell phone plan or your cable plan. They're just trying to see if they can, save you money from what you're already spending on. So it's a great way just to save money really easily. Now, we can come up with a great plan of how we're going to save, but just like a diet or an exercise plan. The hard part is sticking to it. Okay? And there are two main ways that you can stick to the plan that you've created. So once you've decided to say, okay, I'm not going to spend maybe as much eating out, or I'm not going to spend, whatever it may be, one thing you can do is to continue tracking your spending. So whether you're doing that on your own spreadsheet or you're using an app like Mint, just continue to track your spending, and then you can see if you start to deviate from your plan, and you can change your behavior. In fact, a lot of these apps will even alert you if you start to spend more than you've set out to do in a particular category. But let's be realistic. And this is why I said the idea of not everyone enjoys budgeting. Most of us don't, including myself. I don't track every nickel and dime I spend. Another technique you can do is using separate accounts. And so what you can do is use one checking account to pay all your regular bills. So that's where you can pay your rent or your mortgage payment, other loan payments, utilities, cell phone, things like that. Maybe groceries come out of there. And then set up a separate account for discretionary expenses. So this is what I like to call my fun money. This is money that you use for eating out, for shopping, for entertainment. The idea is that there's a limited amount of money that goes into that discretionary account. So you've already preset aside and decided that spending that money leaves you enough for your other goals, right? Whether it's paying down debt or saving for the future. And so you've given yourself permission to spend that money guilt-free. And you know what? You can spend it however you like. You don't have to track where that money goes. The idea is that there's a limited amount of money in that account. So when it's gone, you are done until the next month. If you've got extra money in there at the end of the month, you can splurge it later. Okay. So it limits what you're spending without you having to track every penny. You can do something similar with another account for non-monthly expenses. So if you've got a big bill coming up in a few months, or let's say you've got a trip you're saving for, or the holidays, estimate what you think you're going to spend on that, and then have that money automatically transferred to a separate savings account every month for that goal, right? So to make the math simple, if you're going to spend $1,200 on a trip, then every month, $100 goes into that account. So when it's time to take that trip, that money's there, and you've earned a little bit of interest instead of putting on a credit card and having to pay interest. And along with that, there are also, of course, going to be those expenses we can't plan for, those emergencies. And that's where an emergency fund comes in. Now, ideally, you want to have enough in savings to cover 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. So in other words, if you were in between jobs, which is one of the biggest financial emergencies you can have, you would still be able to keep the roof over your head, keep the car in the driveway, keep the lights on, keep food on the table for at least 3 to 6 months. And I know that that's a lot, if you're starting from scratch. So start with, a smaller goal, maybe build up to $1,000. The average person doesn't even have $400 in their savings account to pay for emergency expenses. So $1,000 will put you way ahead of the average American. And then over time, you can start building up to that goal. So where should you put, savings as you free up money from your budget? Well, one option is to, this idea of paying yourself first, right? Having that money go into a savings or investment account before you even have a chance to spend it. So one place you can do that is your employer's retirement plan. So if you're fortunate enough to have an employer that offers a match on your contributions, try to put in at least enough to get that full match. So if they're going to match every dollar that you put in up to 6% of your income, try to put 6% into that plan, because you're basically doubling your money, right? When you do that, and that's free money. There's a lot of controversial topics when it comes to finances, but free money is not one of them. Definitely a good thing. I'm sure we all love free money. So definitely make sure you're getting that match. You may have other opportunities through your employer, like an FSA that allows you to set money aside tax-free and to spend that money tax-free for things like childcare, healthcare expenses. And an HSA, if you're in an eligible health insurance plan, allows you to save money for healthcare expenses either now or in the future, tax-free. So if you're in the 24% tax bracket, it's like getting a 24% discount on those expenses. So it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Especially if you know you have some out-of-pocket healthcare costs. We already mentioned before the idea of transferring money to a savings account automatically, whether it's for an emergency fund or saving for a goal, like buying that car. Paying down debt. Now, you all said that you don't have debt, right? But if you do, that obviously would be another goal, especially if you have high interest debt like credit cards. And another thing I do want to point out real quick as another place to put savings are I bonds. These are US government savings bonds that are fully backed by the federal government. Okay, so you don't have to worry about them defaulting. They also don't fall in value. They're essentially the closest thing you have to being risk-free. Now, what makes these really neat is that unlike a lot of other investments that are very low risk, I bonds right now are paying over 7% interest. Now that's adjusted every 6 months for inflation, so that interest rate could come down, but you're getting a pretty good return on those US government series I bonds with essentially no risk, right? So especially for short-term goals where, let's say in the next few years, you know you're gonna need to set money aside maybe for a home purchase or something like that, it's a great place to stash some cash. Now, there are some downsides I should mention to them. One is that you cannot sell them, you can't cash them out in the first year. So it's not a good place for emergency money or any money you may need in the next year. If you cash them out in the first 5 years, you lose the last 3 months of interest. But you know what? You're still getting over 5% for that year that you cash them out early. So pretty hard to beat that with any bank account. The other thing is there's a limit to what you can put in, up to $10,000 a year. Plus, you can actually you can get another $5,000 if you use tax refunds. And that sounds really weird. It's a quirky thing with that, but you can get $10,000, up to $10,000 plus an extra $5,000 if you use a tax refund. So that is something I just wanted to point out because I know a lot of people have never heard about this. Okay. So mentioned here, this idea of having emergency savings, ask yourself if you have at least $1,000 to cover emergencies. And if you do, great. And if not, go back through the things we talked about, tracking your spending, looking for opportunities to save so that you can build up to that. Same thing here, try to get that employer match. You don't want to leave that free money on the table. Now, debt, here you just want to focus on paying off any debt where the interest rate is higher than 4 to 6%. So like most credit cards are going to fall into that category, but most mortgages and car loans won't. Those usually tend to be pretty low interest. So it may make sense to invest extra money instead of paying that debt down. And of course, that brings us to student loans, right? The elephant in the room. Here, now, a lot of you, that have student loans are not having to pay them or pay any interest, at least until May. So right now, not a lot to worry about. But eventually, when you do, you apply the same principle. If you have student loans with high interest rates over 6%, you may want to try to pay them down early. If they're below 4, you may just want to make the minimum payments. If they're between 4 to 6, which is, I think, generally where student loans fall, then it depends. If you're more of a conservative person, then you may prefer to pay those debts down. If you're more of an aggressive investor, you may prefer to invest your savings and just make the minimum payments on your student loan. So I'm going to skip over this section about debt because all of you said that, looks like I'm not showing. I'm sorry, I was not showing the slides that I meant to be. Okay, I'm going to skip over this section on debt because of the fact that everyone said that that's not a goal of theirs. But if anyone has questions on debt, let me know. We can come back to this section. And I talked here about expanding your emergency funds. So let's talk about this area of financial independence. This was the most popular topic that you brought up in the poll. So I definitely want to make sure we talk about this area. So the idea of financial independence is getting to a point where you work or don't work because you want to, not because you have to. So don't just think of what a traditional retirement might look like, because for some people, they may choose to work in retirement, or they may choose to start their own business. There's all different kinds of goals that you may have. So first thing when it comes to thinking about financial independence is, knowing, are we saving enough, right? Are we on track for the goals that we have? And one tool that you have that I'm going to show you right now, and I'm actually going to share this, a link to this. This is a retirement calculator that we have at my company, Financial Finesse. So I'm going to put this, let's see here, in the chat box, a link to it. Free retirement calculator, although there's a lot of other retirement calculators you can use as well. So the way this works, if you decide to do this, if you are just want to do yourself, you can do that. If you are married, you may want to choose include your spouse. So I'm going to do this just for one person. Now, the income replacement target, that is what percentage of your current income do you think you would need or want to be really consider yourself financially independent? So without working, what percentage of your income would you like to replace? And the default is 80%, so we'll leave it there, but you can change that. You can adjust this with your current age, the age that you plan to, quote, retire, which I like to say financial independence age. Now, life expectancy, 85 is average, but this is how long we want our savings to last. So I'm going to bump that up to 90 to be safe. And then for income, I'm just going to throw in a number. Let's say $60,000 salary and bonus. And then it'll ask you, what percentage right now are you putting into your retirement plan at work? Like it's a 401k or 403b, whatever it is that you have. So let's say this person's putting away 10%. And if you can have that, if you can increase that number each year, we'll put that in there. But we're going to assume that this person is not increasing it. And let's say they're getting a match of 6% from their employer, but they're not getting anything else from their employer. And let's say their current retirement plan balance is, I don't know, $50,000, and that they are a moderate investor. And then click retirement income. So this is where you can put in your estimated Social Security benefits. So this person, let's say they're going to retire at 65, they'll get a reduced benefit. I'm just making up numbers. We'll put in $1,500. If you're worried about Social Security cuts, you can always use a lower number. And if you don't know what yours is, you can get an estimate on the Social Security website, which is ssa.gov. If you're getting a pension, you can enter that here. Those are pretty rare these days. So if you're fortunate to have one, great. Otherwise, I'm going to leave that blank. Any other income, like if you have rental income from an investment property, you can enter there. Other assets, let's say you have a retirement plan from a previous job or IRAs, which we'll be talking about. I don't know, I'm going to put in $20,000, but let's say they're not adding to that. So in this example, this person is on track to replace about 72 or 73% of their income, which is not really what they want, right? They want to be at 80%. So in this example, this person would have to see, okay, what can they do to hit that? So one thing we could do is maybe they can increase their savings 1% a year. So like they're doing 10% this year, maybe next year it'll bump up to 1 to 11, then 12, then 13, until it gets up to 15%. Let's see what that does. Actually, I swear I did not do these numbers in advance. That actually puts them right on track to 80%. Okay. Now that's for this hypothetical person, right? Your numbers are obviously going to be different, which is why it's good to go in there and put your own numbers in and play around with it. You can try different scenarios. Like if you find yourself way ahead, see if you can retire much earlier than 65, or see what you have to save if you want to shoot for a really ambitious goal. It's even kind of fun, to play around with the numbers a little bit there. So that is a first step you can do when it comes to financial independence. Now, the next thing, though, is going to be, well, where is this money going to go for financial independence? Where will we invest the money? Because you probably don't want to leave it in a savings account paying like 0% right now. Now, first of all, for any money that you invest, you want to make sure this is money you don't need for at least 5 years. Why? Because as we know, the stock market and all these different type of markets are volatile. They go up and down. And it could go down right when you need the money, and it may take years to recover. So any money that you may need in the next 5 years for like emergencies, buying a car, buying a home, you probably want to keep that someplace very safe, like a savings account or those I bonds that I mentioned, right? As long as you don't need that money in a year. So for that long-term money, the key here is just to make sure you are reasonably diversified. Because here is the deep, dark, dirty secret of the investing world. Nobody really knows what the best investment is or the best combination of investments. If people will try to sell you on the idea that they have found the magic key, but it doesn't exist. And if it did, we would all be telling everyone, this is what you should do. So that's kind of the bad news, but it's actually kind of a relief in a strange way, because what we find, and there's been multiple studies on this, is when you compare different investment strategies that different financial institutions use, different investment gurus have written about in various books, the interesting thing is that over the long run, okay, 30 to 40 years or so, all these different strategies and different portfolios end up doing about the same. I think the difference between the absolute best and the absolute worst in one study I looked at was 1% a year. So think of that as liberating, that you don't feel like you're missing out on some, secret strategy that's going to give you crazy good returns. You just want to make sure you are reasonably diversified. Easiest way to do that is what's called a target date fund. You probably have this in your retirement plan at your job because they're very common now. And the way that they work is all you got to do is pick the one with a year closest to when you think you're going to retire or become financially independent. So for example, if my target is 20 years from now. So 20 years from now, we're looking at 2042. There's probably not a 2042 fund, but you can put your money in a 2040 fund or a 2045 fund or split your money between those. They tend to go in 5-year increments. And the idea being is that you can put all of your money into that one fund, and they will then diversify the money for you. They'll do all that work. And then as you get closer to that target date, in this case, 2042, it will automatically become more conservative. So you could just set it and forget it. It doesn't get easier than that, okay? Simplest thing you can do is a target date fund. If you want to have a little bit more control, there are various model portfolios that you can find out there that you can follow. And like I said, if you look at these model portfolios, in the long run, they all end up doing roughly the same, but pick one maybe that you happen to like and that you feel comfortable enough to stick with, because sticking with it is probably the most important thing when it comes to an investment strategy. You may also decide to hire an advisor. Now, an advisor can be particularly useful if you've got a lot of money in taxable accounts where perhaps they can help you manage taxes, or if you really just need someone, to help, you avoid, panicking during a downturn where you may be tempted to just get out. An advisor can talk you out of doing that. Or if you're ever tempted to put like all your money into crypto or something like that, really risky, an advisor can talk you out of that. And so they definitely add value. But if you're the type of person that you're okay just sticking your money in something like a target date fund, in a 401k, and just leaving it, you probably don't really need an advisor and all the fees that advisors can cost. Or an in-between strategy is to use a robo-advisor, which is an online, kind of like a robot advisor, where a computer will basically do the investing for you, and they charge lower fees than a human advisor. You're not going to get the same level of handholding, obviously, but it's a little more customized, than a target date fund. So if you want something like particularly aggressive or conservative, you can use a robo-advisor to get that. Now, the other key thing when it comes to investing is to minimize your costs, because small costs really do add up. Remember, the difference between the best and the worst, about 1% a year, well, that 1% can be taken out by fees and taxes. So let's talk quickly about some ways of reducing taxes on your investments. One way is through your employer's retirement plan, right? It's convenient, comes right out of your paycheck. Your employer may contribute to it, like in that match. There may be a way to have your contributions automatically increase over time. And you can get some significant tax benefits that I'm going to talk about in a moment. You can put up to your maximum pay with a limit of $20,500 for this year, or $27,000 if you're over 50. You can always take a loan or a withdrawal in a hardship. Now, there's two different types of tax benefits you can get. One is putting money in pre-tax. What that means is you're not paying tax on the money when you put it in. So you're lowering your taxes right now. And then you pay the tax when you take it out. And usually in retirement, you're paying a lower tax rate. Okay. And so for most people, that probably is going to be the best deal, because most people pay a higher tax rate when they're working than when they are retired. However, there are a couple of reasons why you may want to do a Roth. With a Roth, you are paying the tax now, so it's not lowering your current taxes, but that money can grow to be tax-free after 5 years and 59 and a half. So if you're worried that you could be paying a higher tax rate in the future, maybe you think you'll have more income in retirement, or you're worried about tax rates going up, you may want to have at least some money in a Roth account. Now, if you think you're going to retire early, before 65, that's when you qualify for Medicare, right? So if you want to buy health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, one of the interesting things is that the subsidies for that health insurance is based on your taxable income. So if you have tax-free money coming from a Roth account, that will not count against you. So you can qualify for bigger subsidies for health insurance. Okay? It's another form of free money. So if you think you may want to retire for 65, that's another reason why you may want to have at least some money in a Roth account. HSAs, health savings accounts, if you're in a high deductible health plan, this is another opportunity to lower your taxes, because when you put money in, up to $3,650 if you have an individual health plan, or $7,300 if you have family coverage, plus another $1,000 if you turn 55 or older. That lowers your taxes. You're not paying tax on that money. And you get to keep the money in that account. You get to invest that money even, remember, as long as you're not anticipating using it in the next 5 years. And it's tax-free if you use it for qualified healthcare expenses, whether you have them now or you have them in the future. And in fact, once you turn 65, you can use that money for anything with no penalty. And it's still tax-free for healthcare expenses. So you can really think of this as another retirement account, as another way to stash money aside with tax benefits that you'll probably be able to use tax-free, because there's a good chance you'll have healthcare expenses at some point. In fact, what you may even want to do is what I do. I don't even use my HSA for healthcare expenses, because the way I look at it, I know I'll have healthcare expenses in the future. So I think of that as money growing tax-free. So what you can do, if you do that, pay your medical bills from your regular savings, just keep the receipts, because at any time you can reimburse yourself tax-free from that HSA. Another type of account that you can put money in for tax benefits is an IRA. This is an individual retirement account. This is not something that is tied to your employer. Okay, so you can open this separately. You can't put as much money in though, only $6,000 or $7,000 if you're over 50. But you have until the tax deadlines. You have until April 18th to contribute for the previous year, so for 2021. If you didn't put money in an IRA, you still have time to do that. Now, there are two types of IRAs. There's traditional and Roth. With the traditional, as long as you meet the income limits, you can deduct the money you put in. So it's just like that pre-tax account, where you can lower your taxes now if you meet the income limits, and then pay the taxes when you take the money out. With a Roth IRA, just like we talked before about the Roth with a 401k, you pay the taxes now, so it doesn't lower your current taxes, but that money can grow to be tax-free. Okay. So, another way to get money growing tax-free for you is a Roth IRA. One quick thing I'll point out about this, a lot of people don't know, is whatever you put into a Roth IRA, you can actually take out anytime you want with no tax or penalty. It's only the earnings that are subject to taxes and penalty if you take them out before 5 years and age 59 and a half. Okay, but all of your contributions come out first, meaning you can even use that for your emergency money, right? Just keep it in savings within the Roth, but you still have access to that money. And whatever you don't take out is growing tax-free. Now, what if you have investments just in a regular account? So this is not in a 401k or IRA or any of these things. Now this is getting a little, this is probably the most complicated section. Mostly I just want you to be aware of some concepts, that you want, if you are fortunate enough to have extra money, to invest outside those accounts, you want to use what they call tax efficient investments. These are investments that don't generate a lot of taxes. Like if you were going to buy individual stocks or what they call ETFs, exchange traded funds, or mutual funds that don't trade a lot, like index funds. These are all things that don't generate a lot of taxes. There are also ways that if you lose money on those investments, you can sell them and you can use those losses to offset other taxes. So let's say that you put money in an investment, let's say it's a stock, and it goes down. Okay, we don't like that, right? But we can take that loss, that lemon, and actually turn it into lemonade. Here's how. Let's say you have invest money in a stock and it goes down, let's say $5,000. Okay, no fun. You sell it. Now, if you have gains in other investments, you can use that loss to offset the tax on that gain. Or if you don't have gains, you can reduce your regular taxes by $3,000 a year, and anything over $3,000 you can use in future years. So if I have a $5,000 loss, I can reduce my taxes $3,000 this year and $2,000 next year. Okay. Now, here's the best part. If I have that loss, I can always reinvest the money. So if the stock market comes back, I still benefit from that recovery. The only thing is something called the wash sale rule. The wash sale rule says that you cannot purchase that same or an identical investment within 30 days of when you sold it. So if you want to put money back into that same investment, you just have to wait past 30 days. So maybe put in something different. After 30 days, put it back into your original investment if you still want to have it. If this is like really complicated for you, and I know for most people it is, this is an area where you may want to work with an investment advisor who can help you manage at least the taxes on those taxable accounts. All right, so talked about a lot of different things. And so in the last few minutes, what I want to do is just summarize the key action steps that you can take, to help you move towards whatever your financial resolutions are. So first thing is matching your spending to your values. See where your money is going. Track your expenses at least one time to have a baseline. Look for opportunities to save, especially with those easy wins. And then create a spending and money management plan you can stick to, whether that means continue to track your expenses or using the separate accounts that we talked about. And then the other main area that people pointed out in the beginning was planning for financial independence, right? Setting up automatic transfers of whatever money you're able to save to savings accounts or to investment accounts, starting with your employer's retirement plan, so you at least get that full match. Running a retirement calculator to see how much more you need to save, for your goals, using those different tax advantage accounts like your employer's retirement plan, HSAs, if you're eligible, IRAs, and then making sure your investments are reasonably diversified and are low cost. Okay. Now, we did have some questions. I'm going to open it up for more questions. I know that before the session, particularly about particular areas involving, questions about things like crypto and NFTs. And the thing I always want to say is because these areas are so new, we don't have a lot of data in terms of how they're going to perform. So I would always consider anything like that to be a speculative investment. It doesn't mean it's bad. You can make a lot of money in things like crypto and NFTs and whatnot, but it's not something, number one, I think that you need to have. as part of a diversified portfolio, you don't want to put too much into those areas just because we don't have a good sense of what they're going to do. We have decades or even hundreds of years of data on things like stocks and bonds and real estate and even things like gold in terms of knowing what the range of potential returns are. So we have a much better sense of what we think they're probably going to do in the long term, although in the short term, they can be just as speculative, right? But we have a much better idea of what they tend to do over long time periods than we do over these newer type of investments. So while I wouldn't necessarily say to stay away from them, I would say to just limit, okay, the amount that you put into these investments, because we really just don't know, what they're going to do. Okay, let's take a look here. So it looks like I got a couple of questions. All right, you talk about saving for future, leveraging a 401k. How do you determine your choice between pre, post, or Roth? Okay, I think we talked about that one already. Great. Oh, this is similar to the question that I just answered. It says, given newish investing options in the market, crowdfunding. In fact, we saw that with a sponsor today, right? Crypto, etc. Have traditional financial planner diversification ratios embraced including these? Or are these investments still considered too volatile and or high risk? If yes, how much are you advising clients to invest in these sectors? And are your percentages by net worth / investing power tiers? Thank you. So yeah, this is kind of just extrapolating a little bit more on what I've already been saying. It's just hard to know how they would fit into the rest of your portfolio because we don't have long-term data on how these are going to perform. And so I would think of them as again, speculative investment. Put money in there that you can afford to lose, okay? Because you could, right? On the other hand, they could also do great. So it's really hard to know because we just don't really have a lot of information of knowing how they're going to perform in the long run. So I hope that answers it. But again, that's not something I think you need to do. With most diversified portfolios are not going to include a lot of those alternative investments. I don't think it's something that you need, right? It may be something that you decide to add. Okay, we are just about out of time. I just want to make sure nobody has any remaining questions. Doesn't look like we have that. Okay, I will turn it back to Megan. Actually, I'm sorry. One last polling question. Sorry. I do want to just kind of see, what steps do you plan to take this year? So out of all the things that we talked about, check off those steps that you plan to take that you're walking away from this session. I don't know if people are able to see the poll. Sorry about all the technical difficulties here. Are people able to see the poll? Okay, it looks like some of you are having trouble seeing the poll, but it looks like we did have responses, so I will share that. So at least of the answers here, we have looking for ways to save more, continuing to track expenses, and running that retirement calculator. Great. All right, thanks a lot. And now I will turn it over back to Megan.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Erik, as always, for taking the time to share your expertise with us. We really appreciate it. This is our third rendition, and I think every time it just gets better and better. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you to the New York Torero Club for facilitating this event. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope that you learned something. We hope that you'll take some things away. But actually, here you will see some events that we have coming up that are virtual, some in person that you see coming up in the next couple of months. We have the South Florida Networking Night tomorrow night. If anyone on this call is from that area or is looking to move to that area, we have a couple of alumni and alumni business spotlights coming up. And then also just some more networking events, some industry-based networking that might be helpful to you if you're looking to expand or take that next step in your career. And then we have a couple of other social events, Men's Lacrosse Alumni Happy Hour coming up, and then some other games that you can attend with fellow Toreros in the Bay Area. So we invite you to take a look at the event listing that we have on our website and hope that you will join us for our next event. And last but not least, I'd like to thank our sponsor, School of Wales, once again, for sponsoring today's event. We really appreciate it. And we also will be sending out some more information about the School of Wales and next steps that you can take if you are looking to get connected with them. So once again, thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you again soon. Good night.